In the dim red glow of the dark room, Santiago Rivas stood motionless before the developing tray, still wearing gloves. The photograph was slowly appearing, the halogen silver reflecting light in an eerie way. And then the face emerged. A girl, around 17 years old. Her hair hung to her shoulders, her lips were cracked and dry, her gaunt cheekbones clearly visible under the light cast from above. But it was her eyes that captured Santiago's attention, the most wide open, staring directly into the lens. No fear, no anger, just emptiness, as if there was nothing left behind those pupils. He leaned closer, his eyes just centimeters from the surface of the print. Under the edge of the picture, a handwritten inscription in fine calligraphy, "Not art. Obedience." Santiago sighed, pulling his chair back. His heart beat faster than normal, not out of fear, but because of the familiar feeling rising within him, the intuition that only came when he was about to uncover a truth. The room he was in was less than 15 square meters, half of it occupied by a folding bed, bookshelves, and piles of old documents, the other half transformed into a makeshift dark room. The fume extractor ran quietly, the dripping from the sink echoing in the silent space. Outside, the city of San Luis Potosí was shrouded in the night mist. 2 days before, Santiago had bought this Polaroid SX70 camera at an estate sale in Hacienda del Silencio, an abandoned farm near the Coahuila border. The seller was a gaunt, middle-aged man who couldn't remember where he'd gotten the camera. Inside, there was still an undeveloped film cartridge labeled with a faded sticker, "Do not develop, already taken." Usually, old film cartridges like this only produced overexposed or completely blank images. But Santiago, as always, didn't dismiss anything that had once contained an image. He had his own method of restoration, learned from an Argentinian technician in Buenos Aires during a writing assignment. That very technique was now producing results that he wasn't quite ready to accept. He sat down, took out his old leather-bound notebook, and flipped to the page labeled "Missing 1990s." Each line in it was a missing person case he had heard about, dug into, but never had enough evidence to write a story. Girls aged 17-18. From regions like Zacatecas, San Luis Potosí, even Coahuila. Almost all forgotten, no witnesses, no leads. Their families gradually fell silent. The police closed the files. But Santiago never forgot their faces that only remained in newspaper photos or faded investigation files. He scanned every detail of the photograph, the light, the shadows, the background behind the girl. The wall cast concrete unplastered, but with a wavy pattern, very distinctive. He'd seen this type before. Saltillo, a warehouse south of the city near the old industrial district. In 1998, he had been there with an investigative policeman named Mateo to see the scene of a torture case which was never prosecuted. In that warehouse, the concrete walls had exactly this type of pattern, abandoned since the 80s by a military construction company. Santiago gripped his pen, writing in his notebook. Highly probable location is Saltillo. Time before 1998. Subject unidentified. Expression strained, eyes not reacting to light. No fearful movements. Conditioning or mild sedation. The dripping sound grew louder. He turned back to the sink, one last photograph. It had been soaking for over 7 minutes. It should have appeared long ago. But this time the restoration process was stranger than usual. The lines were unclear until Santiago tilted his head at just the right angle. A pair of eyes, close up, very close to the lens. Eyes wide round with lingering tears on the lashes. Not dead eyes, eyes that were still alive, and had just realized they were going to die. Santiago recoiled, feeling dizzy. In his years of investigation, he had seen many such eyes, but there was something very strange about these eyes. In the red light, the photograph seemed to be looking back. He lightly touched the edge of the print. His hand trembled. Not out of fear, but because what he felt most clearly at that moment was that someone had cried out for help through a look, across time, through the photograph. To him, nothing in the photo was fake, and she wasn't dead when it was taken. Beneath the image there was no inscription, but there was an indentation, as if someone had pressed hard with a pen without writing. Santiago took a charcoal pencil, gently rubbing the back. A faint symbol appeared, SM. He blinked. A symbol. Initials. In his head, his memory worked like an old but not broken machine, conjuring a list. There was one name on the last page of his notebook that he had never dared to touch: Soledad Marquez. Missing since 1995. El Mineral near Matehuala. No body, no last words, just vanished. Santiago stood silently. The photograph was still wet, but that face had already remained within him. The next morning, Santiago put on a baseball cap, put his notebook in his coat pocket, and took the second girl's photo with him, the wet eyes code SM. He didn't eat breakfast. His mind still lingered around that look, like a whisper still lingering on the photographic paper. His destination was the old newspaper archive, a two-story building in the middle of the old quarter. The exterior was covered in moss, the wooden door as heavy as if no one had ever opened it. Inside there was a smell of mildew old paper and something salty, like memories that had been wetted and then dried. The only person always there was Mr. Felix, a retired editor of El Mensajero, retired since 2002. Felix lived among the files, as if living among old friends, his memory intermittent but as deep as a stone well. He was sitting on a wooden chair, a newspaper spread on his lap, his glasses perched on the tip of his nose. "Another girl calling you from the afterlife," he said, before Santiago even crossed the threshold. Santiago gave a dry smile. This time, its initials, SM. Felix raised an eyebrow, putting the newspaper aside. "Soledad Marquez." Santiago stopped short. "You remember her?" "Not because of her, but because of her mother." Felix stood up, walking slowly toward the dilapidated filing cabinet at the end of the room. "She used to come here, bringing pictures of her daughter, asking every newspaper, hoping they could publish an article to find her daughter." Santiago swallowed hard. "Do you still have it?" Felix pulled out a pale yellow file, labeled Personales no publicados. Inside were cases not published or cut from the final issue. He pulled out a thin sheet with a black and white photo. Soledad's face, younger, fresher, but with the same eyes. A certain wordless melancholy. He flipped it over. Soledad Marquez, 17 years old. Missing since August 1995. Near El Mineral, Matehuala. "She's the third one," Santiago said, placing his photo next to it. "I have photos of 2 more people, same age, same region." "Let me see." Felix put his glasses back on, leaning closer. This is Luz Elena Castañeda, missing in 1994 in Zacatecas. And the other... Wait a minute. He rummaged through another drawer. An hour passed among papers and the creaking of the ceiling fan. Santiago sat on the floor, still holding the dry Polaroid photograph. Finally, Felix returned with a faded cardboard cover, the cover of an art photography magazine printed in 1994. On the cover was the line, Jóvenes y Luz, Youth and Light. Below was the blurred image of a young woman, a profile hair, loose face unclear. A photography workshop in Zacatecas, Felix said. Organized by Esteban Guevara. Santiago looked up. That name sounds familiar. Sure does. He used to be famous for abstract nude photos using real people, but accused of staging torture scenes and turning them into light art. He was once sued by a minor model, but the case disappeared. Santiago took out his notebook, turning to the 1997 lawsuit page. A faint note, e.g. interrogated, not prosecuted, disappeared afterward. That's him. Felix nodded. Esteban Guevara disappeared after the 1997 interrogation. No passport, no trace of leaving the country. As if he never existed. Santiago stood up, his eyes intense. Do you have any photos of him? Felix chuckled softly again. I keep this to always remind myself that no art is above ethics. He opened a drawer, taking out a faded newspaper. An old interview, Esteban Guevara. The light of beauty needs no permission. Below the article, a headshot. A man around 40 years old, long hair, a direct gaze, an uncomfortably familiar gaze. Santiago stared. No way. What is it? This face hasn't changed. I just saw it in a recent photo in an online exhibition. Could be his son, or... He took a step back, his mind reeling. Felix just silently watched him, then said, if he's still alive, then what he left behind isn't just photos. Before leaving the center, Santiago stopped by the old computer room. He searched for the name Esteban Guevara with the keywords workshop and retratos. Nothing. But then he remembered a blog dedicated to underground art movements. He found a link that had been removed. However, thanks to skills he had learned from a hacker who assisted in the Oaxaca execution investigation, he retrieved the old page's cache. The website was black with white font. Only one last passage remained, the text in italics. They don't just take pictures, they create the models. And models are never free. Santiago turned off the screen. In his head, a single question echoed as clear as the sound of a camera winding. Who is taking the pictures, and who is being trained to become the next model? The print shop was nestled in the western suburbs of San Luis Potosi, where the brick walls had faded and power lines sagged like ancient scythes. The main door was locked with a heavy iron bolt. No sign, no camera. But Santiago knew the right address, because no one in this city did analog photo restoration better than Raya Mendoza. He knocked 3 times. Silence. Then a woman's voice echoed out, neither warm nor wary, just resolute. Come in. The door opened a crack. The smell of chemicals rushed out like a slow fog, soaking into his coat immediately. Santiago stepped in. Low-hanging neon lights reflected off the worn concrete floor. Each of his footsteps echoed as if reverberating through a decade. Raya was standing next to a photo scanner, her hair cut short, a white blouse stained with dark photo developer streaks. She didn't look up, just said, "Show me the photos." Santiago took 2 Polaroid photos from his coat pocket, clipped in cardboard. When he opened them, her hand stopped. She stared intently at the second photo, silent for a long time, but in her eyes it was clear that she was shaken. "Why do you want to restore this?" she asked. "Because the person in the picture may not be dead." Santiago replied, his voice low. "And I think she's trying to ask for help." Raya reached for a pair of tweezers, gently picking up the photo and placing it in the light analysis tray. "Don't tell me any sentimental stories. I need data." She placed the photo under a spectrometer, turning on the halogen light. "3 light sources," she said after a few seconds. "One from above, one from the side, and one from behind the subject. But there are no shadows." Santiago frowned. "What does that mean? Because it's a staged photo, but not in the usual way." Raya turned back to the machine. "This light isn't just to highlight the face, but to eliminate the sense of depth." She pressed a few buttons. The screen displayed each layer of light separated. A mapping diagram appeared overlapping. Santiago was no stranger to this technique, but he had never seen a light layer with veins, as if it had been bent before touching the subject's face. "You mean this photo has been edited after it was taken?" he asked. "No." Raya shook her head. "This is real light, but something is forcing the light beams to converge on the eye point." The girl's eyes are locked to the center of the frame. Locked. Raya turned to look at him for the first time. Like when someone makes a mouse stare directly at the camera before electrocuting it. The space seemed to thicken. Santiago squeezed his hand slightly. "And this?" She put the third photo into the scanner, the close-up. "There's an unusually blurred area on the left edge." She zoomed in. Under the flat light, a faint shadow was covered crudely, as if someone had placed an object directly in front of the lens. Raya increased the contrast, adjusting each pixel. Gradually, a shape emerged, a shadow of a person standing behind the subject, at an angle half of the face burned out by the light. But the lips were still clearly visible, as if saying something. "This person wasn't photographed with her," Raya whispered. "This person is looking directly into the lens as if knowing there's a camera there." "Could it be someone else in the group?" Santiago asked. "No." Raya shook her head, still working. Small figure hand gripping the collar, not standing at attention. "This is uncontrolled behavior, like someone who's been locked up for too long and sees an open door." She increased the red saturation. The outline of the mouth became clearer. There was something in the articulation. "She's saying something," she said. "Maybe a cry for help." Silence stretched out. The sound of the photo printer running behind them. Santiago didn't know what to say, just looked at the woman's face as if looking at a lingering ghost. Suddenly, Raya stood up straight, her eyes fixed on the screen. She took off her gloves, pointing her index finger at the screen. "Santiago?" For the first time, she called him by name. Her voice trembled. "She wasn't photographed. She looked into the lens, and I think she's saying, 'Help me.' There's no record called Estudio Nueva." Raya said, her fingers gliding quickly across the glass surface, each ray of light reflecting in her eyes like a living neural diagram. "But..." She stopped, clicking on an old note, digitized from an art photography publication, 1995 Reformer Visual Magazine. There was an exhibition that was banned halfway through. A space simulating psychological emotions called the Biological Dark Room. where viewers had to bow their heads before the photos because the light hanging from the ceiling reflected in reverse. Santiago sat motionless in front of the computer screen. Everything in the old archive room in San Luis Potosi was old rickety tables and chairs, stained walls, flickering fluorescent lights. The computer was a desktop from a decade ago, the hard drive whirring like someone gasping for breath. He had been searching all morning, hundreds of photos from various sources, mostly old art photos, some blurry, some blank. He was about to give up when suddenly a photo appeared, black and white, showing every detail. It was a steel warehouse, high vaulted ceilings, surrounded by cold walls, windows sealed with iron mesh. The light that filtered in was very weak, just enough to see a wooden chair in the middle of the room. There was no one in the photo. But the chair was placed alone facing the camera, making Santiago shudder. Right below the photo was a handwritten inscription, slightly smudged, but still readable. Location Saltillo, Coahuila. Experimental studio. No recording allowed. Santiago's heart pounded. The phrase experimental studio didn't sound like a normal photo studio. He looked at the photo carefully again. There were some traces on the wall, as if there had been backdrops or lights. On the ground, there was tape in a square shape, probably to mark the position of the model. A space prepared carefully. But for what? Who took the picture? Who was it used to photograph? He tried opening other photos in the same folder, but many couldn't be viewed. Some were blurred, some were encrypted. Finally, he managed to open another one. This time, a photo of an old camera mounted on a tripod facing a blank wall. There were still some pieces of tape on the wall, as if to mark the position. Everything was very careful, very precise. Santiago zoomed in on the photo, then stared at the composition of the frame. Everything was calculated. Light distance, camera angle. Here it is, Santiago said. Esteban Guevara built an entire stage, not to display, but to train. Raya nodded. The light in the girl's photos matches exactly the 4200K halogen lamp, the type used in field surgeries where there's a need to expose emotional 3D models. It doesn't make the model prettier. It makes the model look more real than real. They set off around noon. Saltillo appeared after nearly 3 hours of driving covered in grey dust. The industrial city was now just a steel shell and dilapidated warehouses. The GPS led them to Zona Industrial 4 on the southern edge, where there used to be a cold storage plant called Hielo Blanco. The main gate was locked, but in the back, a small rickety door was ajar. Santiago knocked 3 times, then opened it gently. No answer, only the sound of heels tapping softly in the dark hallway. A hoarse voice drifting from the shadows. "What are you looking for in this place?" the old man asked, his voice raspy, his mouth barely opening. He was slumped in a broken-legged wooden chair, his back hunched. Santiago stopped, not getting too close. A cold wind whistled through the cracks in the warehouse wall, carrying the faint sound of metal clashing underground. "We're looking for someone," he said. "Looking for whom?" "Esteban Guevara." As soon as that name echoed, the old man's face twitched slightly. One hand reached towards his knee, as if to rub an old pain. He swallowed hard. "He is not to be named here." Raya stepped forward, looking him straight in the eye. "We know about Studio Nueve. We know what happened in the basement." The old man sighed like an old chimney exhaling its last puff of air. "The basement door doesn't open during the day." "We're not looking for the warehouse," Santiago said slowly. "We're looking for the photos." The old man shook his head. The photos are in my head now. I used to be the lighting technician there. He raised a skinny finger pointing to the sky. When he wanted the model to look afraid, I adjusted the light from above. When he wanted them to cry, I just needed to tilt the light angle 3 degrees. Santiago leaned forward. You said he. Is it Esteban? Don't know the real name. I called him Senor G. He glanced towards the spiral iron staircase. He and the boys brought the girls in wooden crates. No screaming, no crying, like wax models, but their eyes still darted. Raya and Santiago were silent. The old man continued. Raya and Santiago stood silently. No one asked anything more. There was no need to ask. The old man closed his eyes for a second and then opened them. In that moment, his eyes were no longer blind, but as if seeing the memories that had died in the light. Down there, he said, his finger trembling, pointing to the end of the hallway. There's a technical air vent, very old, used to transport chemicals, not locked. He turned away. You shouldn't go in there. But if you've decided, bring your own light. Don't let his light shine on you. The way down to the basement was behind a fake metal partition. Raya found the old air vent wide enough for one person to crawl through. She went first. Santiago followed, holding a red flashlight to avoid damaging any film if there were photos left. The air was as cold as a stone cellar. They crawled through the nearly 10-meter-long duct, then fell into an empty chamber, Estudio Nuevo. The flashlight beam swept across rusted steel photo racks, an old projector mounted on a concrete base, a makeshift darkroom made of black plastic sheeting, still smelling of old developer. Everything's still intact, Santiago whispered. Raya turned on a thermometer. This room is kept below 15 degrees. There's a manual cooling system to keep the photos from deteriorating and maybe also to keep the bodies from decomposing quickly. Santiago walked around finding a steel cabinet. The lock was rusted, but the cabinet door wasn't completely closed. He looked at Raya. She nodded. They opened it. Inside were large film canisters wrapped in foil numbered F1 to F212. There was a notebook leather-bound with only one symbol on the cover, G. Raya put on gloves, carefully opening the first page. The handwriting was sharp, even reading subject voluntary pain, location basement number 9, note subject adapts quickly after 3 days, begins to react with correct emotion after 5 consecutive light exposures. Santiago took a step back. They didn't take pictures to record. They took pictures to experiment right on the living people. Raya stopped shining the light on another page. Under the words was a sketch. A thin girl hand raised eyes wide, a note next to it. SM reacts correctly to simulated pain. She gripped the notebook tightly. Soledad Marquez was the model kept the longest. Right then, a metallic sound echoed from the ceiling. Something had just slid through the air vent they had crawled through. Santiago turned off the flashlight. Raya whispered, "Someone knows we're here." Santiago turned off the flashlight. The air immediately plunged into thick darkness. Only the sound of rapid breathing and the rustling of cold steel bars. Raya whispered her lips close to his ear. "Someone knows we're here." A second later, the sound of very faint footsteps echoed from the far end of the hallway, not rushing, but as if watching. Santiago took Raya's hand, whispering, "Back." They both turned their heads, stepping backwards towards the old exit. No lights on. No talking. Only hearing the sound of blood rushing in their ears. Through the air vent behind them, the moonlight cast a small streak. The only chance. Santiago crouched down first, pushing the steel cover out, letting Raya crawl out first. As he closed the cover, the sound of iron hitting the duct echoed inside. Someone had reached where they had been standing just seconds before. They both ran across the abandoned yard towards the car. The night was still dark, but the sky was opening up a light that was not Esteban's nor Studio Nueva's. The coffee shop they stopped at was nestled in a small alley near the Saltillo train station. Raya put the leather-bound notebook on the table. Santiago ordered 2 black coffees, no sugar. No one spoke for a few minutes. The sound of the pages turning sounded like a small rustle ruff, as if each letter was glued to the paper with dried blood. Just before leaving the basement through the air vent, Santiago suddenly saw a strange object lying between the mouldy rolls of film, a leather-bound notebook, the edges worn with the letter G embossed on it. He hesitated for half a second. "Hurry up!" Raya called from behind. Santiago reached out, snatched the notebook from the shelf, and then squeezed through the vent. As soon as he got out, he quickly stuffed it into his coat. The smell of old leather and photochemicals clung to his hand. Esteban didn't take notes like a normal person. He didn't write dates. He didn't recount the process. Each page only contained parameters. Blink frequency 7 per minute, decreases to 4 after 36 hours. Jaw joint amplitude measured when crying, 0.8 semicircles acceptable. Subject doesn't react to loud knocking on the 3rd time, not achieved. And every time a page had the line, achieved, he marked a red streak straight as a line drawn across the eyes of the person in the drawing. Each exercise is like a physical survey, not photography, Santiago muttered. Raya nodded slightly. He's not photographing people. He's measuring reactions. They turned to page 14. The presentation changed. Sketches appeared. Clear pencil lines drawn by the hand of someone with technique. Each image was a pose, head tilted to the left eyes, looking up, mouth open, as if about to scream, but not making a sound. A note was between 2 images. Eye expression level V, tears welling, no blinking jaw relaxed. Raya looked at that sketch for a long time, then got up and went to the counter. She asked to borrow a blank sheet of paper and a pen, quickly sketching a composition. When she returned, she said, I've seen this before. In a modern art exhibition in Mexico City 3 months ago, the theme was forced silence. Santiago looked up. Who's the author? I.G. She replied, her voice hardening. No real name known, but the works all simulate states of mental disorder through photos of real people. She opened her tablet, connecting to the coffee shop's free Wi-Fi. She scrolled to the exhibition page. A headline appeared, Ignacio Greer Aesthetic Submission. They scrolled down. In the series of photos one made, Santiago held his breath. It was a photo of a girl, head slightly bowed, light shining from above, shadows pressing tightly against her cheekbones. It was 3-dimensional light, exactly like in the old photo from Hacienda del Silencio. Raya zoomed in on the bottom of the frame. Her hand trembled. This! She tilted the screen. In the lower right corner of the frame, where it was reflected through the glass, was a blurred shadow of a person standing between two exhibition stands. They looked at each other, no one saying anything. The sound of rain seemed to pour down suddenly harder. The barista, a silver-haired woman wiping cups, suddenly said, "Are you looking for the children in the warehouse?" Santiago turned around. "You know about that?" The woman put her hand on the counter, her eyes shining with a deep sadness. "I investigated there for a long time. I was looking for my daughter. Every night I heard a truck backing up iron doors, banging against the wall. And one night, I heard something, like people reading lines. But no one answered." Raya and Santiago listened silently to her. The woman didn't look at them, her eyes fixed on the cold coffee cup in front of her. "She disappeared in 1994. She said, her voice like an old piece of wood breaking in half. Luz Elena. She was only 17. She said she was going to attend a photography workshop in Zacatecas. I even took her to the bus station." She raised her hand, gripping the handle of the cup tightly. "I stood there and watched her get on the bus. But she never came back. No one believed me. They said my daughter ran away with a boy. The police said there was no evidence of kidnapping. My husband couldn't take it. He died in 2001, taking all hope with him." Santiago looked at Raya. She nodded slightly, as if implicitly saying, "Ask." "Do you remember the name of the organizer of that workshop?" he asked. She nodded, as if she had been waiting for someone to ask that question for decades. Esteban Guevara. Tall, slightly curly hair, spoke softly, politely. Had an old Leica camera. I remember it very well. He came to each house to invite them, saying my daughter had the potential to be a professional model. Her voice choked up. I don't think she's dead. I always believed that someone kept her, forced her to do things that weren't human." She bowed her head, taking out an old photo from her pocket. Luz Elena in her high school uniform, bright eyes, hair loose on both sides, her smile still intact. Santiago took the photo with both hands, carefully, as if holding a part of his own memory. "We won't let this be buried," he said, his eyes fixed on the photo. Raya added her voice light but resolute. "If Luz Elena is still alive, or if someone ever held her captive, we will find out, and there will be justice." She nodded, her eyes teary. "Just needing someone to believe me is enough." They both left the cafe in the red glow of Saltillo's evening. In Santiago's hand was the old photo of Luz Elena. In his head were the matching faces from the first restored photo. "If we're right," he said softly as he opened the car door, "then it's not just Luz Elena. There are many other girls like her who still haven't had their names called again." Raya nodded. Her eyes were no longer as cold as at first, but a silent determination, a hatred not expressed in words but flowing underground like lava in a mountain. For the first time, they felt like they could actually touch the truth. But it was at that moment, when faith had just opened, that darkness found them. The photograph was neatly tucked in the dented metal mailbox at Santiago's lodging. No envelope, no sender's name. Just an original Polaroid print, never scanned. When Santiago pulled it out, his palm trembled slightly. The photo was of him sleeping on the chair, his head leaning back. his mouth slightly open, his hand still holding Esteban's leather-bound photo book. The light shone from behind his neck, casting a long shadow on the wall. A shot too close, as if only a few steps away. No one else had been in that apartment last night. Santiago sank down, holding the photo as if grasping the last evidence of sanity. He didn't remember when he had fallen asleep. He didn't know who could have photographed him at such a close distance. Right at that moment, the phone rang. One ring, stopped, then rang again. No number, just unknown. He didn't answer. A fear rose in his heart. Santiago stared at the photo in his hand. There was no mistaking it. The angle from behind the neck, the light filtering through the old curtain, the right position where he usually sat every night, the old leather chair, the wooden table with the coffee stain and the dim yellow light. The photo couldn't have been taken by anyone other than someone who had been in the room and didn't leave a trace. He held it, staggering into the room, locking 3 locks, drawing the curtains. His hand still gripped the edge of the photo. Call Rhea. No answer. Only a long, impersonal beep, as cold as metal. Rhea didn't arrive until nearly dawn the next day. She brought her laptop, intending to continue decrypting the metadata of the photos from the film reel with him. Santiago opened the door with his left hand. His right hand still held the photo. He hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot. "What's wrong?" Rhea asked, putting her bag down. Santiago gave her the photo without a word. She picked it up, examining it carefully. Her eyes stopped at the background, then the light, then the shadow behind the chair. "Taken from inside the room," she said, her voice low. "Right. And only one person knows the position I sit in every night, knows the light in the room." Santiago said, his eyes fixed on her. Rhea looked up, her eyebrows furrowed. "You suspect me." Her voice was cold, as hard as a knife pulled from ice. Santiago was silent for a second. "Does anyone else know I live here? Does anyone else keep those photos?" His voice was hoarse from the sleepless night. The slap wasn't hard, but it was decisive. "You think I went into your house and took photos? You think I'm playing that sick game?" Santiago turned away. She grabbed his collar. "I risked my life to go into that basement with you. I restored each photo with my eyes to find every detail, and you suspect me?" He didn't answer. His hands clenched. The veins in his neck twitched slightly. Rhea walked straight to the door without looking back. Before disappearing down the hallway, she turned her head, her eyes dry. "I'm a photo technician, not a test subject for you to torment." That night, the old neighbor knocked on the door. "Mr. Rivas, I think there's something I need to tell you," he whispered. "I heard a click last night, like a camera, but not a phone. Something older, maybe a Polaroid." He said that and left immediately. Santiago stood motionless, gripping the edge of the table tightly, because perhaps he had suspected the person who had been the most trusting and kind to him. Rhea scheduled to meet him in the late afternoon. No calls, no long texts, just a note left in the crack of his door. "Old cafe, 4 o'clock. When Santiago arrived, she was already sitting there. Her eyes weren't looking at him. In front of her was a large opened envelope. On the table was a sharp print, a photo from Ignacio Greer's exhibition, taken from the original 35mm film. Rhea pushed the print towards him. "I went to the place where Ignacio Greer's exhibition was held," she said, without beating around the bush. "I asked for the original of one of the photos with strange details that you mentioned." She pointed to the right corner of the photo. The glass frame surrounding the photo reflected a face. She pulled out another enlarged print. The reflection was clearer. "This is you, in the photo, on that day, in the right pose, wearing the right clothes." Santiago looked closely. Indeed, it was him, standing looking at the photo as if being watched by the photo itself. "The problem is," Raya continued, her voice restrained, "no one took this photo. There are no security cameras. No customers standing at the same shooting angle." She looked straight at him. "That means someone was watching you, photographing you, and putting that photo in the exhibition as part of a series of works. You didn't know. I didn't either. But he knew exactly who you were, and he has started to put you into his game." She paused for a moment, then said softly, "While I was being suspected by you, in fact, you are the target." She slung her bag over her shoulder, her eyes dry. "I only help investigate, not be a bullet shield for you to blame. From now on, don't contact me again." The cafe door closed behind Raya. The small bell rang and then fell silent like a silent sentence. Santiago sat alone. The photo was still on the table, his face in the reflection, looking straight at him now as if the past was mocking the present. He tried to swallow hard, but his throat was too dry. His hand touched the edge of the photo, then recoiled as if touching something both burning and cold. She was right. He had suspected the wrong person, pushing away the only person who trusted him in the labyrinth of nameless faces, soulless eyes and photos that looked back. And now what? Now he was gradually becoming the model. 2200 hours. Santiago returned to the darkroom. He turned on the photo washing tap. He placed a tray of water, as was his habit, after each investigation session. But when the red light turned on, he saw a photograph already in the tray. He had never put a new roll of film in. He had never opened the developing tank tonight. He bent down. It was a photo of Raya, tied up, eyes looking up, light shining on the right cheekbone, mouth moving, no sound, no captions, just articulation clear and ice-cold run. The Sierra de Catorce welcomed Santiago with the grey of fog and cold stone. No cell service, no road signs, only the old pine trees shivering in the early season wind and the dirt road as if drained of blood beneath the tires. The GPS coordinates led him to a narrow turn hidden by bushes. He abandoned the car, walking for nearly half an hour until a wooden cabin appeared before him, walls covered in moss, a sloping roof, no windows. But on the roof, a sealed infrared camera still glowing red in the drizzle. He didn't knock. He took out a small folding knife, prying open the hinge. The door popped open gently without a sound. Inside was a cold, dark space, but the electricity was still working. The red indicator light on the outlet was still blinking. The camera battery charger was warm. On the old wooden table, a roll of film that had just been removed from the camera. Santiago followed the narrow hallway, opening a fake door in the back. A small tunnel lined with wood led underground. The air changed smell, chemicals, metal, and something like sweat that had been dried out for a long time. He went down the stairs, turning on the flashlight. A subterranean darkroom appeared fully equipped. A photo enlarger, washing trays, zoom lenses, a digital eye movement measuring device. On the walls hung densely packed photos, all of Raya. Different angles of her face, facial expressions noted, mouth moving. 0.3s, good light response, muscle contraction, reflex incomplete. At the very back, Raya lay on an iron chair, her hands tied. Her eyes were half closed, her body ice cold. Santiago ran over, cutting the ropes. She opened her eyes, not screaming, just whispering, "Don't touch the screen, someone's watching it." Behind them, a metallic sound echoed softly. The secret door opened. A woman stepped out, thin, long-haired, wearing old, rough clothing. Her eyes weren't panicked, but calm, alert, like someone who had stood in the darkness for a long time waiting for someone to enter. "Who are you? Are you in their script?" she asked. Her voice was small but reverberated as if from a deep cellar. "Santiago Rivas," he replied. "I came to save you, if you're Soledad Marquez." She looked up at him, then said, "Save? No one is intact enough to be saved here. We are living photos. Every action is recorded, repeated, and then erased." Raya stood up, shaking slightly. "Who held you? Was it Ignacio Greer?" Soledad shook her head. "His real name is Ivan Guevara, Esteban's son, born at Studio Nueva. From childhood, he was trained as a photographer, but there was no world outside the frame. He doesn't know what's real. He only knows how to make images obey." "Did you help him?" Santiago asked, his voice strained. "I teach the new girls how not to be afraid, how not to die. I don't kill anyone." Soledad said, her eyes falling. "I only survive by keeping the frame in the right ratio." They found the side room where there was a film canister cabinet, a long row. The order wasn't by date, but by the subject's initials. One box was marked S.R. Santiago Rivas. He opened it. Inside were photos of himself taken from behind, while washing, photos while standing in front of the cafe, while talking to Raya. Each photo had a small note in delicate handwriting. "Initial impact observation, stage 2 reflection." The lights in the room flickered. A screen mounted on the wall lit up. An image appeared: Santiago right now standing in the middle of the darkroom next to Raya and Soledad. The angle was from above an infrared camera. Below text appeared without sound: "Act, witness." Santiago stood frozen. Raya recoiled, her eyes shifting to absolute wariness. Soledad looked at the screen, whispering, "We haven't escaped yet, because everyone has stepped into their role." The underground room now took the form of a stage without an audience. No wall was flat. Each corner was designed to create visual depth. A corner of sadness with a cold blue light and a fake window. A shattered corner where the floor tiles were deliberately cracked, and a corner of submission where the ceiling lights shone down like interrogation lights. In the middle of the room, Soledad sat, an old wooden chair back straight. In front of her was a fixed camera, unmanned, but the light was still blinking, recording. She looked straight into the lens without blinking. "I taught them how to endure," she said. "Not to live, but not to break while living." Raya sat close to the wall, her hands still marked by the ropes. Her face was pale, but her eyes hadn't softened. Santiago sat opposite Soledad Esteban's leather notebook, placed next to him, open to the page. Reflection level 4. Still face, watery eyes, heart slows down. "What did you teach those girls?" Santiago asked, his voice calm. "How to be photographed without disappearing." Soledad replied, "How to look 15 degrees off the camera so the face still has some freedom. how to keep tears in their eyes without falling, how to stand without being straight so as not to become a statue. Santiago squeezed his hand slightly. And you're also a victim of theirs. Soledad turned to look at him. Her eyes weren't angry, just empty. If I'm a victim, how should I live then? She paused for a moment, then continued, her voice even. When I was kidnapped, I cried. I screamed, but no one cared. No one looked at me as a person until I learned how to stand in the right place, look in the right direction, cry in the right way. Then they started to see me. She bowed her head. I became a model because that was the only way for me to be seen. Not for me to be myself, but to survive. Raya gave a faint laugh. Or were you good enough at playing the role to be kept? The air seemed to freeze. Santiago looked from Raya to Soledad. Two women, two opposing poles, one wanted to rescue one, had adapted to the point of no longer demanding rescue. Have you ever tried to escape? Santiago asked softly. Soledad was silent for a long time, then replied, I don't have a body. I only have composition. I'm not seen as a human. I'm only photographed. And photos never run. At the same time, a buzz sounded. The large photo printer at the end of the room activated. No one touched it. The machine operated on its own, the first photo sliding out of the slot, a new print still wet with ink. Santiago went over, cautiously picking it up. It was a photo of him standing in the middle of the room, looking at Soledad, who was smiling. He turned around. Soledad was sitting still, not smiling. There was no moment like that had just happened. He picked up 3 more photos. Each photo was a scene, but he was present in positions he had never stood in, never performed. These are photos of the future, Raya whispered. No, Soledad corrected. These are photos of the script. He writes it in advance. He sets up the space. He just needs us to execute it. The 4th photo appeared. In it, Soledad was sitting as she was now. But behind her, Santiago was holding a camera, pointing it at her. Raya shook slightly. You're not going to... No. Santiago recoiled. Soledad looked up for the first time. Her look was softer. You are the last person who doesn't have a role. So, he's creating a role for you, witness. A light turned on in the submission corner. The projection screen lowered. A line of text appeared, final scene break. Soledad closed her eyes slightly. The script will be repeated. The roles have been defined. Now is the breaking scene. The buzzing sound came from the wall behind, making Santiago turn around sharply. Previous model is done. Now start recording the witness. At the same time, all the lights changed color. No more white light from the camera. Now it was cold yellow light radiating from the spotlights mounted on the ceiling. The cabin space shook slightly. The main door slammed shut, the electromagnetic lock clicking. Raya recoiled. We've been locked in. From 4 corners of the room, small cameras turned on. A slow zoom taking a close-up of Santiago's face. One panning across following Raya's movement. Soledad disappeared. Santiago ran to the door in vain. The magnetic lock operated on an internal source. Could not be broken. It's him, Raya whispered. Ivan. A light ping sounded. The large screen lowered without warning. On it, images of Santiago's childhood. a boy around 8 years old, standing in front of a mirror, wearing a wrinkled suit, trying to button his jacket. Behind his mother's voice echoed, "Smile, honey. Let Dad see the photo." The angle was too close, not a candid shot. It was from inside, from his house. "No way!" Santiago recoiled. "Who filmed this?" Ivan's voice echoed, deep dry as a thread being burned. "You filmed me. Now I'm filming you back. Every habit, every heartbeat, every moment you thought was private was in my camera all along." The cameras swiveled slightly. Each time the light flashed, the image on the screen changed Santiago in every state, sleeping angry, sitting silently for hours at his desk. "Not live stream," Raya hissed through her teeth, accessing the control panel behind the wall. "This is pre-built, simulation, based on personal files." "We're not being filmed live," she said. "We are recreating ourselves according to a pre-existing script." A series of photos slid out of the printer, each frame of Santiago and Raya, but scenes that never happened. One of them was Santiago kneeling before Ivan, one hand holding a camera, the other holding a photo of Soledad. That scene never happened. A door opened at the end of the studio, but not an exit door, but the door stage. A light-blocking screen turned on, projecting a person's shadow from behind. The light was a sharp blue-purple, and behind the screen, Ivan Guevara stepped out. He was wearing a black photographer's shirt, a leather strap over his shoulder, not carrying a camera. His eyes were soulless, sunken like empty sockets. His skin was pale, his face had no expression. Ivan didn't take pictures. He just looked. No blinking, no moving. Raya stepped back, her hand gripping Santiago's hand. Ivan spoke each word like a knife cutting through paper. "You really are an amazing specimen, your expressions, especially when you're scared." Santiago didn't say anything. His whole body froze like an overexposed photograph, all expressions frozen. The opaque white light from the ceiling shone down, making every line on his face stiff like a statue. Footsteps echoed. A shadow stepped out from the darkness behind Ivan. Soledad. She had moved behind Ivan without them even noticing. She stepped out as if replaying an old movement, walking evenly, slowly, neatly, as in the exercise, silent movement before the lens. Raya shook her head slightly, stepping back. "No. No way." Soledad looked at them. Her eyes had no hatred, no pity, but were soulless like the camera lens. From the moment Ivan appeared, she didn't say anything. She just stood next to him like a familiar assistant. Whenever he nodded, she moved. When he raised his hand, she turned on the light. Not a single extra movement. No slow, no confusion. And no one, not even Santiago or Raya, realized that she was no longer trembling. When did she separate from the role of victim? Perhaps from the moment they stepped into the cabin. Maybe even before that, from when she knew Ivan was coming back and she understood the script better than anyone. Ivan didn't speak. He just smiled slightly, a smile just enough to remind Santiago, "You brought me the trump card." Raya shook her hand. She turned to Santiago, shouting hoarsely, "We were wrong!" Soledad raised her head, looking at the camera hanging in the middle of the ceiling. A moment of silence. Then she turned to look at Santiago. "Now I take pictures." The sound of birds chirping in the canopy opened the moment of awakening, but there was nothing peaceful in that sound. Santiago opened his eyes. It was morning. But the light wasn't warm. It was harsh, as if the whole forest was lit by stage lights. He was tied to a wooden post, his wrists tingling, his mouth dry. The smell of pine resin, damp earth, and rust mixed together. Next to him, Raya was also lying on her side, the ropes tightening around her waist, pulling her shoulders back like the posture of a discarded doll. 10 meters away from them, Soledad was bent over. She didn't say anything. She was holding a diagram marked with a red pen, light angle 1, close-up frame, painful face, fixed lens switch, 50 mm. She moved each camera, 4 of them, mounted on tripods, pointing at the corners like animal traps. On a high stone slab behind them, Ivan Guevara stood. His black clothes were stained with dirt. His eyes had no light, just 2 eager black holes. He raised his hand like a director calling the final scene. "Both of you are really perfect for the end of my masterpiece. What could be more wonderful than the death of 2 people? You should both feel proud for dying for art, and also the peak of my art." Raya gritted her teeth. "Peak, the peak of sickness." Santiago jerked his hand. The ropes tightened deeper. "I thought you were mute. Now it turns out you're crazy." Ivan wasn't angry. He just smiled, light as the sound of a camera film running. "Death also needs to be posed," he said. "I've been preparing for 3 months. You've played this role very well. Thank you, Santiago. Thank you, Raya." He pulled a long scalpel from his back pocket. Black handle, clean, no trembling. "I think I'll photograph every moment, from the first twitch to when your eyes stop convulsing. I'll call it the peace after witnessing." Raya shouted, "Soledad! Are you going to let him do this?" Soledad was still busy turning the camera. No answer. Ivan approached. Santiago and Raya couldn't retreat, couldn't cover, couldn't run. He raised the knife. "Smile, witness," he said, and then a very loud crack rang out. Ivan stopped short. His eyes widened. Blood flowed from the back of his head. Soledad stood behind him holding a broken tripod leg. Her eyes were wide, her breath was rapid. Her hand trembled but didn't let go. Ivan staggered. The knife fell to the ground. What are you doing?" he said, his voice breaking like a piece of film being torn. Soledad said slowly, each word clear as a drum beating the last beat. "I've endured enough, being a test subject for you." One step closer. "Now I want to be a human, really a human.